A late-night misunderstanding torn two families apart, would we ever heal? We're not racists, we just wanted to bring home our missing son. I stared at the computer screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, deleting and rewriting the email draft to my son's girlfriend's parents for what felt like the 100th time. I still couldn't bring myself to hit send. Moonlight seeped through the gap in the curtains, casting a pale glow over my anxious eyes. What had started as a kind invitation for a Disney vacation had turned into an insurmountable wall between our two families, all because of a late-night mix-up. My family is financially comfortable, living in a detached villa in the suburbs with 4 children. Our 16-year-old oldest son, Noah, was entering his teenage years. The once clingy little boy had grown into someone with his own world, and my husband and I were navigating the tricky waters of curfews, teenage relationships, and other coming-of-age challenges with cautious care. Noah's girlfriend, Leah, came from a world entirely different from ours. Her parents were immigrants, and her family of 6 crammed into a tiny house in the town's working-class neighborhood. The rooms were so small that her siblings had to share bunk beds, and the living room doubled as a dining room, always filled with the buzz of chatter. But Leah was smart, sensible, and as cheerful as a sunbeam. Not only did she consistently rank among the top students in her grade, but she also listened patiently to Noah's worries and encouraged him to face academic pressures head-on. My husband and I truly adored this girl. Every time she visited our home, she'd voluntarily help clear the table and play with her younger siblings, bringing much-needed joy and laughter to our once-quiet household. When we brought up the plan for a family trip to Disney in June, Noah immediately refused. "Mom, Disney is for little kids. I'm 16, I'll be so awkward hanging out with my younger siblings." Fearing our long-planned vacation would fall through, my husband and I talked it over and decided to invite Leah to come along. "We'll cover all the expenses," I told her gently when I found her. "We'll book 2 hotel rooms, your dad and I will chaperone the kids separately. You and Noah will never be left alone." Leah's eyes lit up instantly. She'd never been to Disney, or even traveled far from home. But her excitement faded just as quickly. "Aunt Julie, my parents might not agree." My heart sank. I knew exactly what was holding them back, the incident a month earlier, in the middle of the night. It was a Saturday. Noah had gone to Leah's house early in the morning, promising to be home by 11 p.m. As curfew approached, I texted him, "Sweetie, it's time to head back. Do you want me to come pick you up?" The message went unanswered. I called his phone, only to hear the automated voice say, "The number you are calling is temporarily unavailable." Minutes ticked by, 11 p.m., 11:30 p.m., midnight, and still, neither Noah nor Leah answered their phones. I paced the floor, my mind racing with terrifying thoughts. Had they been in an accident? Were they in danger? I remembered the 2 previous times I'd gone to pick Noah up from Leah's house. I'd told him exactly when I'd arrive, but when I knocked on the door and rang the doorbell, even though I could hear footsteps and voices inside, no one had answered. In the end, Noah had snuck out the back door, explaining that his family hadn't heard me. "I have to go check on him." I grabbed my car keys, ignoring my husband's protests, and drove to Leah's neighborhood. The working-class area was eerily quiet at night, with dim streetlights and the occasional bark of a stray dog sending shivers down my spine. I parked outside their rundown little building. It was pitch black except for a faint light coming from a second-floor window. I took a deep breath and climbed the creaky stairs. First, I knocked softly, no response. I knocked harder, but still, nothing. I pressed my ear to the door and faintly heard the sound of a TV, but no one answered my calls. "Noah. Leah. Are you in there?" I shouted their names, my voice echoing through the silent hallway. Still, no one replied. It was already 12:30 a.m. Anxiety and fear washed over me like a tidal wave. I pulled out my phone, my hands trembling as I dialed the police. "Officers, my son is missing at his friend's house. I've knocked and called but no one's answering. I'm worried something terrible has happened, please come check on him." 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. One tried knocking again, but there was still no response. The other shone his phone flashlight through the window and spotted 2 huddled figures on the couch. "Someone's in there," he called out in a firm, authoritative voice. "Can anyone hear me? Open the door." After a few more shouts, the lights inside suddenly turned on, followed by hurried footsteps. The door swung open and Noah and Leah stood there, bleary-eyed and confused, rubbing the sleep from their faces. "Mom? What are you doing here? And why are there cops?" Noah's voice was thick with sleep. I pulled him into my arms, checking him over frantically. "You scared me half to death. Why didn't you answer your phone? Why didn't you open the door?" Leah finally snapped out of her daze, looking embarrassed. "I'm so sorry, Aunt Julie. We got so wrapped up in the movie that we fell asleep. We had our phones on silent, we didn't hear you knocking or calling." The officers confirmed it was all a misunderstanding, warned the kids to keep in touch with their parents in the future, and left. But I never could have imagined that this late-night mix-up would spark such a deep misunderstanding with Leah's parents. The next day, Leah's mom texted Noah, her tone clearly upset. "Noah, why did your mom call the police last night? We may be poor but we're decent people. Having cops show up will ruin how the neighbors see us. Does she think just because we're immigrants, we don't care about our kids' safety?" Noah forwarded the message to me. I felt a surge of panic and hurt. I quickly found Leah's mom's email address and wrote her a long letter, explaining my fears in detail. "I have no racist intentions whatsoever. I was just terrified for my son. He'd gone missing late at night, and I'd had trouble getting someone to answer the door there before. I had no other choice but to call the police. I sincerely apologize if my actions upset you or your family." But the only response I received was a short message, "Understood." Later, Leah told Noah that her dad was furious, thinking I'd made a mountain out of a molehill, and that I looked down on them because of their background. Just as I was tearing my hair out over the vacation invitation, and the rift between our families, an even bigger crisis hit. Over a year later, I posted a heartbreaking update on a parenting forum. My 17-year-old son, Noah, was in a rehabilitation center for substance abuse. It turned out that long before he'd started dating Leah, Noah had gotten curious and picked up a marijuana habit. Eventually, he'd moved on to abusing prescription drugs like Xanax. When my husband and I found out, we tried everything to stop him. We took away his driver's license, threatened to kick him off the school sports team if he didn't quit, showed him documentaries about the devastating effects of addiction on families, and even tied his allowance to regular drug tests. But no matter what we did, Noah was hooked. He'd sneak around behind our backs, continuing to use. Determined to save our son, my husband and I spared no expense, sending him to wilderness therapy programs and therapeutic boarding schools one after another. During his first 3 months in wilderness therapy, Noah did well. He kicked his addiction, actively participated in physical activities, and got along well with his counselors and peers. But just 6 weeks after coming home, he relapsed. He even overdosed and collapsed in the bathroom, rushed to the hospital in critical condition. We thought we'd found the solution when we sent him to an expensive therapeutic boarding school that cost $17,000 a month. We'd hoped the strict supervision would help him break free from drugs for good. But instead, he met other boys with substance abuse issues at the school. Urged on by them, he'd stolen medication from a first aid kit during a field trip and overdosed again, landing him in the ICU. During those dark days, my husband and I were consumed by grief and guilt. We even started to doubt if we'd made the right choices. But every time we saw our son lying weak in his hospital bed, we reaffirmed our resolve: as long as he's alive, there's hope for him to get better. When Leah heard about Noah's condition, she didn't leave him. Instead, she wrote him letters regularly, encouraging him to keep fighting and sharing updates about her studies and life. She told him she'd be waiting for him when he recovered. Leah's parents were deeply touched by their daughter's kindness. And when I later visited their home to apologize in person, explaining the entire story behind the late-night police call in detail. The misunderstanding between our two families slowly began to fade. Leah's dad shook my hand and said, "I was too stubborn before. I shouldn't have doubted your character. As a parent myself, I understand how worried you must have been for your son." Over the 10 months Noah spent in the rehabilitation center, he endured painful withdrawal symptoms, and went through countless hours of therapy. Gradually, he began to understand that his parents' strictness and persistence had come from a place of love. He realized his actions had hurt not just himself, but also his family and Leah. He started cooperating actively with his treatment, participating in rehabilitation programs, and even learned to play the guitar and paint in the center, using art to channel his emotions. The doctors and nurses all praised his progress. He'd not only kicked his addiction for good, but had also become more cheerful and optimistic. When Noah turned 18, he graduated from the rehabilitation center. Instead of going back to school right away, he decided to get a part-time job to build his resilience. He worked as a server at a cafe, waking up early every morning to go to work, and spending his evenings studying at the library to make up for the school he'd missed. Leah often visited him at the cafe, and the two of them spent time together like any other couple, dining out, watching movies, taking walks, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. My husband and I watched our son's transformation with immense joy and relief. We knew our healthy, sunny Noah was finally back. A year later, Noah returned to school. Through hard work and determination, he got into his dream university, majoring in psychology. "I've been through the darkness," he told us. "I want to become a counselor and help other teenagers who've struggled with substance abuse, just like me." Leah also got into the same university, studying education. The two supported each other through their studies, growing together every step of the way. 3 years after graduating from university, Noah proposed to Leah. In front of the castle at Disney World, he got down on one knee, pulled out the ring he'd been saving for, and said, "Thank you for never giving up on me during my darkest days. You gave me the courage to stand back up. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Leah nodded through her tears, and the crowd around them erupted in applause. On their wedding day, I watched my son, handsome in his suit, and Leah, beautiful in her wedding dress, my eyes filling with tears. Leah's parents also came to the wedding, and our two families celebrated together joyfully, all the past misunderstandings long forgotten. After getting married, Noah and Leah settled down in our city. They often brought their children to visit my husband and me, and our family would gather for meals, chats, and trips, filled with laughter and happiness. The tattoos on Noah's arm, once a sign of his rebellion, were still there, not particularly attractive, but now, in my eyes, they were precious symbols of his rebirth after enduring so much suffering. Looking back on the years we'd spent overcoming misunderstandings, addiction, and separation, I felt a flood of emotions. Life is like a journey, I thought. It's inevitable that we'll encounter thorns and hardships, but as long as we have love and perseverance, we'll always find our way to the light. My greatest wish is to cherish every moment with my family, to let my children know that no matter what happens, a parent's love is always there. This long journey of parenthood was filled with obstacles, but because of love and persistence, we'd finally reached a happy ending. And that initial invitation to Disney. It had evolved into a beautiful love story that had weathered storms, and a family's lost happiness, rediscovered at last.